Hi there, and welcome to this. What I think is going to be the last in this series of Introduction to Pivot Tables. There's one more thing I want to do before I go off and do some more pivot table related stuff. Is last time we looked at creating country and region using data validation and data validation with indirect, which means that when I choose the country, I get a choice of 3 countries, and depending on which country I've chosen, I then get a choice of 3 cities. And what I would like to do is, based on that city that they've chosen, automatically fill in the salesperson's name that works in that city. So I've made a little table of the salespeople and their relevant regions. So we'll do this as an XLOOKUP, just like we did last time with the cost per unit column. So I'm going to say my salesperson's column, something a bit wider because the names might be quite long. We'll do it as an XLOOKUP. You can do it as VLOOKUP if you're familiar with VLOOKUP, but I tend to use XLOOKUP now because I find it a little bit easier. And I'm going to say the lookup value is the region. The lookup array is the name of the region on this sheet, and the return array is the name of the salesperson. And if not found, I'm just going to put in, I don't know, check region table or something. It just means if for some reason they misspell someone's name or something like that, they'll get this as the error message in the column. And watch this column down the right hand side as I choose OK, because it's set up with this format as table option, which you find on the home tab. It means that you don't have to copy the formula down. The formula will fill itself down all the way. So if I've chosen Leon, I get Elodie, and if I change that to Paris, I get Pierre, and if I change it to Lille, I get Luke. So it is pulling across a salesperson for each group. And what that means is when we do our pivot table, we can get totals by each person. Now, the next thing I want to do is do like a little dashboard with several different pivot tables on it, I think this time. So I'm going to go to Insert, Pivot Chart, and Pivot Table. And I'm going to say I want it on a new worksheet. Now we've got some additional fields on the headings. We'll also have additional fields appearing in the pivot chart fields. Let's say for this one, I'm going to do it by client. So I'm going to pop client onto the axis, and let's say how much money, I guess, is what I want, which is going to be total cost. I'll pop that into the values area, and then that's just showing me the total amount of money that's been spent for each client. I could add additional information in there. Let's say something like product. Now, if I put product in the legend, have a look at what's happened to my chart. Can you see what that means is you get a different color for each product, which you might want. The other thing that you could do is you could put product underneath client in the axis area. And if I make this a little bit bigger, you'll see that then I've got totals for all the baked goods people, totals for all the cakes people, and totals for Jameson's Bakery. Now, the next thing I would like to do is maybe a little bit of formatting. I don't particularly like this default table style, which I think I've mentioned before, just because what it does with my subtotals is it puts the totals at the top of each group, and I think people expect the totals to be at the bottom of each group. So I'm going to go to my design tab, and where it says subtotals, I'm going to choose where it says show all subtotals at bottom of group. I also like it where you have a blank line in between each group. So I'm going to say blank rows and then insert blank line after each item. Then you can go through and maybe choose a different color scheme for your table. There's an option called banded rows, and that's what makes your rows stripy if you find that easier to follow along. Personally, I think I'm going to do without banded rows. What I might also do is I'll make my chart a little bit bigger for a minute, and I'm going to try to make the chart a similar sort of colour scheme to whatever colour scheme I've chosen with my pivot table. So once I'm clicked onto the chart, the design is then talking about the chart design rather than the table design. And I know we looked at these change color options in a previous exercise. So you could, if you don't mind these colors, you can just pick the kind of preset colors. But I think they're quite limited. If you like this kind of monochrome look, then that's fine. But if you want a very specific color, maybe you want to match it with your logo or what have you, what you can do, if I click onto the whole series, so I just click onto any one of the bars, can you see all the bars have been selected? When I go to the Format tab up the top here, I can change the color by choosing Shape Fill, and then there's an option called More Fill Colors, and this will give you a much bigger selection of colors. If you are trying to match it precisely to a logo or something like that, you can use the RGB numbers and then you get exact match on the colour. But I don't have that, so I'm going to do a sort of random guess and go, oh, I quite fancy this light green or something. And then it's updated the whole column. If you select a column a second time and then choose a colour, let me go for some really leery colour so you can see what I'm talking about. I'll go for pink this time. Can you see it's just that column that you've changed? And the process of you having done that is setting up a legend so you can have potentially a different colour for each column. I'll just do that one more time and you'll see what I'm talking about. So if I then go, I'll have the next one orange and I will have the next one, I don't know, blue or sort of. Can you see it's updating automatically on the legend there? Now, because I've got such a complicated looking chart, I think that legend is going to be too busy. So I'm just going to undo those color changes back to the point where I've got the same color for each column. Now, I wanted to have a look at some of the options that are on the chart itself. Can you see in the bottom left-hand corner, I've got client and product as little filters, and that's because they are sitting in this access categories area here. So if I want to filter for a specific client, I can just choose the client that I want. And if I hang about for a second, now I'm only getting the data for Baked Goods Limited. And if I choose a different client, let's say I just want Jameson's Bakery, and then I'm just getting the data for Jameson's Bakery. Alternatively, if I go back and choose Select All again, I can then choose by product and say I only want to see carrot cake and cheesecake, and then it's applying those filters. And again, I can remove them all by choosing that Select All again. The other thing you might notice is in the bottom right hand corner here, you get a little plus and a little minus sign called Expand Entire Field or Collapse Entire Field. And if I choose Expand Entire Field, I'm not up to my full level already, but if I choose Collapse, can you see it's taken me down automatically to just show me the totals for each client? And if I expand it again, I'm opening it up to show it by product as well, which I think is quite nice. The other way of doing a filter is to put it in the filters area here. So let's say I want to do it by country and by region. Can you see I end up with two little filters up the top here, and I can say I just want to see France, and then I'm just getting the data for the French records. And if I choose the region, then I'll say I only want, I don't know, Lille. I have to choose somewhere that is in France. There we go. And it's just filtering for my Lille customers. And again, there's an all option on both of those filters to switch it back to all the data again. Now I'm just going to zoom my chart down a little bit smaller to show you. We did look at this briefly previously, where you can put in something called a slicer, which effectively does the same things as these filters, but I think they're a little bit easier to use. So if you've got users that you're setting up a report for and you want them to be able to filter by themselves, I think this is really helpful. It's on your Pivot Table Analyze tab. There's an option called Insert Slicer, And let's say I will have, I don't know, client and product. And then I get a slicer for each one, which you can position wherever you want on your sheet. And just because I'm going for a groovy green colour scheme this time, I'm going to format my slicers to be green. Maybe I'll have a different colour for each slicer, actually, just to make them really obvious. Now I can just choose the client from the slicer and choose the product that I want, and it's applying both of those filters at the same time. If you want to switch off a filter, there's a little remove filter option in the top right hand corner that will just clear your filters down to no filter at all. The other option that you might want, again on the Pivot Chart Analyze tab, there's an option called Insert Timeline. So if I choose Insert Timeline, I've only got one date column, but it means that I can have a little timeline. Let's say I'll position him along the bottom here. And then it means that you can just click onto a particular month just to see the date of that month, or you can drag to see a whole quarter, or drag to see 6 months at a time. And you can see that the data is updating here to show you how much you've shown. Now, my data is only 2026, so that's all I can do really. But you could, if you've got years worth of data, you can say I want to see 26, 25, 24. I could set it by quarter. Or I could set it by month, or if you had daily data, you could set it into individual days and you could just see a couple of days at a time or whatever. I'm just going to set mine back to months. And again, because I'm obsessed by this lovely light green, I'm just going to format it up here to show you the colour scheme. Now, I think that's where I'm going to stop with the introduction to pivot tables. If you are interested in doing very much fancier pivot tables, or if you are thinking about upgrading your life to include Power BI, which has got some lovely graphics that you can use, I'll do another series that's a little bit more advanced, but I think this is as advanced as I want to get for this one. So this is going to be, I think, the 10th in the series, and then I'll do a more advanced series that looks at advanced pivot tables and Power BI at some point in the future.